Daniel adopted me because there was a 95% chance I would differentiate into an alpha in the future. He personally trained me and raised me to become a worthy heir. But right before I came of age, I received a report confirming I had differentiated as an Omega. Knowing Daniel didn't like having any Omegas around, I kissed him on a whim while he was drunk and then tried to leave quietly. But he caught me before I could get away. That night, I differentiated into an Omega right in front of him. I thought for sure I'd be kicked out immediately. I looked up in embarrassment. "Father, I've let you down. I'm not an alpha." But instead, I met Daniel's eyes, his usually restrained gaze now tinged red. "It's okay that you're not an alpha," he said. "You can still fulfill your duty as my son, by giving me an alpha heir. Right here." 1. After losing both my parents, I ended up with Daniel, a man so powerful in City A that he practically controlled everything. His reason for adopting me was simple. As a top-tier alpha, he had never liked an Omega in his life, not even once. He was even repulsed by them. But he needed someone to inherit his legacy. And the moment he saw me, he got his hands on my gland differentiation test results. There was a 95% probability I'd become an alpha. So Daniel brought me home from the orphanage. He raised me himself, trained me personally, and groomed me to take over for him. The day Daniel returned from abroad, I drove to the airport to pick him up. The man who stepped off the plane was tall and commanding, with sharp brows casting a shadow over his eyes, so dark they looked bottomless. Next to him stood a young alpha with fox-like eyes, lazily draping an arm over Daniel's shoulder. I glanced up without showing any emotion. That spot beside Daniel used to be mine, no one else's. I lowered my eyes and stepped forward. "Father." Daniel was dressed in a long black coat that emphasized his broad shoulders and narrow waist, his presence more intimidating than ever. He looked down, absent-mindedly rolling an unlit cigarette between his fingers. The guy beside him quickly pulled out a lighter. Daniel glanced at him, bit down on the cigarette, and tilted his head, letting me light it for him instead. It was habitual, instinctive. The flame flickered, lighting up Daniel's half-lidded eyes. He looked down at me and murmured, "You upset?" I opened my mouth. "No." Daniel gave a faint chuckle. Ash from his cigarette dropped onto my collarbone, burning my skin just slightly. The guy beside him looked at the empty lighter in his hand, raised an eyebrow, and casually put it away, smiling softly. "Chairman. And this is..." Daniel straightened up and wiped his hand. "He's mine." "Oh. So this is Brian. No wonder, raised by you personally. Looks like a real prodigy." The new alpha beside Daniel seemed unnervingly familiar right from the start. "Have you differentiated yet? Cute little alpha." I kept a cold face. "No." "A shame. If you end up differentiating into an Omega, your father's expression will be priceless." His hand landed on the back of my neck, almost like a familiar gesture. But the unretracted scent he was giving off made my skin crawl. I frowned without realizing it. Still, he was someone Daniel brought with him. "Parker." Daniel finally spoke. Voice cold. "Touch him again with one of your dirty fingers, and I'll cut off whichever one it is." Parker. That name. I looked up almost the moment I heard it. Among all the alphas Daniel clashed with over the years, Parker was the one he butted heads with most. He'd once publicly threatened the foundation of Daniel's family power, completely falling out with him. And yet here he was, standing next to Daniel like it was nothing. That could only mean two things. Either Parker had real power of his own now, Or someone backing him that even Daniel had to respect. Sure enough. When we got into the car, Daniel leaned back in the rear seat. Legs crossed. A faint stream of smoke curling from his nose. His expression hidden in the haze. Parker's no good. Stay away from him. I met his eyes through the rearview mirror. Yes. Father. Too. When I walked into the company, Thomas immediately threw himself at me. Did you pick up Daniel? I caught him with one arm so he wouldn't fall. I've sent Father home. Thomas was the Omega Daniel chose for me. When I was younger, I used to sneak into Daniel's room to sleep because I was scared. He scolded me a few times, but I'd cling to his chest and refuse to let go. Eventually, tired of the hassle, Daniel brought Thomas in to keep me company. Since we were the same age, Thomas and I got close quickly. For a while, we were so tight that we shared everything. Until one day, Daniel, expression dark, grabbed Thomas by the collar from my bed and threw him out of the room. You're going to be an alpha. Learn to sleep on your own. Don't stuff just any stray cat or dog into your bed. Now. Thomas pulled a test report out from his coat. My results came back. Just like the projection said, Omega. What a shame. He sighed. Sometimes I'm really curious what that thing looks like. Can I see it? I tossed him onto the couch and slapped the report against his face. How do you want to see it? Ha! You think I can't tell what you're thinking? Stingy. Thomas said, sticking out his tongue. Undeterred, he climbed right back up from the couch and followed me. Did your final differentiation report come in yet? I lit a cigarette but didn't take a drag. Not yet. After reaching adulthood, an ABO's secondary gender is confirmed by one official differentiation test. But everyone already expected my result. I was supposed to be an alpha, just like Daniel. Daniel raised me like an alpha from day one. I trained in combat and firearms. But he never allowed me to smoke. And now here I was, holding a cigarette. Just for the taste. I looked out through the floor-to-ceiling window and couldn't help thinking. This life of luxury is getting unbearably dull. I slipped my hand into my pocket and pulled out a business card. Just a phone number. But I immediately knew who it came from. No idea when it was slipped in. And I had no interest in finding out. I folded the card and tossed it into the trash. Just then, the secretary knocked and entered. Brian, she said. There's a gentleman outside asking to see you. 3. I crossed my legs and stared at Parker across from me. What now? Couldn't get to Daniel. So you're trying your luck with me? Don't you know what Daniel and I are to each other? Of course I know. Parker said with a smile that never reached his eyes. Not just me. The whole city knows, Brian. You're Daniel's most loyal little lapdog. I gave a slow smirk and took a sip of coffee. So what? Parker lifted his gaze. There was a flicker of ambition in his eyes that made this young alpha look almost unhinged. There's only a thin line between a dog and a wolf. My eyes flashed coldly for a moment. But I quickly stood. Expression indifferent. I've heard about you too. After you differentiated into an alpha, you slept with the Omega stepfather who raised you. I'm not into that kind of twisted nonsense. And I sure as hell won't be working with someone like you. Behind me. Parker raised an eyebrow. He stirred the coffee in his cup slowly and lazily. Brian. Don't speak too soon. One day, you'll be the one begging me to work with you. When I returned to my office, the secretary looked uneasy. I assumed it was another company issue. So I asked out of habit. What is it this time? Funding trouble again? Then I noticed what was sitting neatly on my desk. A sealed envelope, my official differentiation report. I pulled off my gloves and reached for it. That's when the secretary spoke. "Brian, your test results are in. Your secondary gender is Omega." My fingers froze midair. Almost instinctively, I flipped to the last page of the report. Black and white text confirmed it in bold. "Mr. Brian, your secondary gender is Omega." The result, completely opposite of what we'd all expected, poured ice water down my spine. How was I supposed to tell Daniel? He had poured years of time and effort into raising me as his heir. And now, I'd become the very thing he despised most. I remembered how Daniel treated the last Omega who got close to him. That person was thrown off a yacht deck without hesitation. My hands clenched into fists. If Daniel found out I'd differentiated into an Omega, would he throw me out just as easily? If that was going to happen, maybe it was better for me to leave first. At least that way, I'd keep some dignity. 4. That night, I came home for dinner. Daniel sat across from me. He sliced his steak with practiced ease, drizzled on some sauce, and slid the plate in front of me. His gaze briefly swept past my waist, expression unreadable. His voice, low and magnetic, dipped a little lower. "When you left the house, your belt wasn't buckled like that." My mind was elsewhere, and I answered without thinking. "Thomas helped me." Thomas had always been careless. Daniel knew that, so he didn't question it further. But maybe because I was close to my differentiation. For the first time, I caught a whiff of Daniel's alpha scent in the air. It was rich, like red wine. Powerful. Dominant. It made every Omega near him instinctively wet. And now that instinct was hitting me hard. I crossed my legs under the table without even realizing it. Thankfully, Daniel didn't seem to notice. "What's wrong?" Daniel paused but didn't look up. "You don't look too well," he asked casually, like any concerned parent. But I was so tense I bit down on my lip. "Testing the waters," I asked. "Father, have you ever liked an Omega?" Daniel looked up, a little surprised. "Why are you asking that all of a sudden?" His reply came, calm as ever, and cruel as always. "No. And I never will. There's no place for any Omega by my side." It was exactly the answer I expected. But I still gave a bitter smile. "Brian. Seriously, what were you hoping for?" That meal felt like the longest one I'd ever had. The moment it ended, I rushed into the bathroom. I stripped quickly, my body flushed and feverish. Then I suddenly remembered. My private bathroom was connected to Daniel's room, with only a one-way frosted glass wall between us. When I was a kid, I used to fall and hurt myself in the shower. So Daniel had the wall replaced with frosted glass to keep an eye on me. It was never changed, and I rarely bothered pulling the curtain. Daniel almost never came into the bedroom anyway. And back when I thought I'd be an alpha, it didn't matter even if he saw me. But now, things were different. Without thinking, I pulled the curtain across the frosted wall and turned on the hot water. I sat in the tub, slowly sliding 2 fingers downward. The skin was soft, too sensitive. Just a light touch turned it red. This was the beginning stage of differentiating into an Omega. It was my first time trying. And a soft gasp escaped my throat. Steam slowly filled the bathroom, hazing the air, until it reached the ceiling, where a hidden red light blinked atop a high-definition, 360-degree rotating surveillance camera. I stayed in the bathroom for quite a while. My face flushed as I finally stepped out. Water dripping from my damp hair. Daniel was sitting in the living room, unusually. He hadn't gone out tonight, and was quietly handling some work on the sofa. I opened a bottle of wine right in front of him. He glanced up, pushing his gold-rimmed glasses with one hand. "What's this?" Suddenly feeling like drinking. I didn't answer him. Just leaned on the counter and poured myself half a glass. "Care to join me for a drink?" "Father? I have an international meeting tonight," Daniel said, looking at me briefly before pausing. "But I can keep you company for a little while." We drank quietly, passing cup after cup. I'm not good with alcohol. My face quickly flushed red, and my vision blurred as the room swayed. Somebody draped a coat over my shoulders from behind, and a familiar deep voice whispered in my ear. "I remember. You're about to fully develop into an alpha, right?" I didn't want to answer, instinctively leaning my head on the broad alpha's shoulder behind me, softly humming in response. Daniel chuckled lightly, the faint smile in his eyes hard to read, maybe a hint of fatherly fondness. "You've had too much, honey." He helped me to bed gently, his warm hand still resting lightly on me. Just as I was about to get up, I grabbed his coat. "Daddy, don't go." The alcohol burned in my veins, maybe mixed with the approaching mating season. I instinctively didn't want this alpha in front of me to leave. Without thinking, I leaned in, my breath warm and scented with wine against his jaw. I parted my lips and gently bit his cool, soft lips. A suppressed moan rolled out of his throat. Daniel was caught off guard by the sudden kiss and stumbled slightly, his fingers, clutching the back of my head, stiffened for a moment. "Let go." His voice was low and rough, as if holding back a storm. His deep eyes, in the dim light, churned with an unreadable and unsettling intensity. I didn't loosen up. Instead, I awkwardly traced my tongue over the part of his lips I was biting. A faint metallic taste of blood spread in my mouth. Suddenly, Daniel's weight pressed down on me, muscles tensing. "Look at you now, there's no alpha in you at all." Though he was scolding, it was different from his usual anger. His breath was hot on my scent glands, filled with restrained fury. His gaze burned me like a tangible flame, heating my flushed face from the alcohol and emotions, finally settling on my slightly parted lips stained with a trace of blood. In a gesture that felt both punishing and possessive, Daniel roughly rubbed his thumb over the blood, sending a deeper shiver through me. Afterwards, he slowly pried my hands away, placing them back under the covers. This man was always so distant, so cold yet so close. I could only look up to him, never touch him. The door opened, and a cold breeze swept through the room. "Thomas, I'm so cold," I murmured, clutching the blanket around me. In the dim light, Daniel's broad back stiffened suddenly, fingers tightening, veins standing out. It wasn't just hearing another Omega's name from his son's lips, it was also noticing the large damp spot on my pants near the belt buckle. His eyes darkening. Daniel had little sense of morality. Before admitting his feelings, he could still play the role of a gentleman and pretend with you. But once you stepped into his hunting ground, everything had to be under his control. His expression shifted significantly. He returned and, with two long fingers, took out a gag from the locked cabinet and firmly put it in, making sure no more words he didn't want to hear would come out. But truthfully, I wasn't planning to speak anymore. I only whimpered a bit at the discomfort. "Good boy," Daniel said softly, his shadow falling over my long lashes. "Remember, I raised you." Because of the gag, My breath, heavy with wine, couldn't escape properly. And I muttered complaints. Don't put it in so far. It's uncomfortable. Daniel frowned, removed the gag with one hand, then pushed his fingers to the back of my throat. No chance now. Good boy. You can only die in your father's bed. The hangover was unbearable, the headache pounding as I woke up. I had no memory of how I ended up in bed last night. Even drunk like that. The covers were neatly tucked in. Daniel had left early. Probably off to deal with work. My phone rang a few times before I answered. It was Thomas. I fished Parker's business card out of the trash and sent you a photo. My voice was thick with congestion. A simple coming out. Thomas hesitated but couldn't help asking. Are you really going to work with Parker? What did Daniel do to you? I looked down, unsure how to explain that Daniel hadn't done anything to me. It was me. I didn't want him to know I'd be developing into an Omega. I didn't want to disappoint him. After hanging up, I stood by the window for a long time. Finally, I dialed the number on the card Thomas sent me. The call was answered quickly, but all I heard was breathing. There were faint sounds of fingers teasing and muffled whimpers. Apparently, Parker wasn't in a hurry to speak. He seemed like a patient hunter, waiting for me to ask. After a while, I lowered my guard. Parker, let's meet. City A was Daniel's territory, full of his people. Though I was his official heir, my schedule was always on his desk by the hour. If I ran, within 3 hours, someone would find me and bring me back to Daniel for a reward. If anyone dared openly oppose Daniel in City A, it was Parker. The true outlaw who had killed his alpha father and inherited his omega father's position. We met at a cafe. He sat across from me, slowly wiping his fingers. Earlier than I expected. Seems like you've got quite a problem, Brian. I ignored the sarcasm and said directly. Get me out of City A within 3 days. Parker smirked, clearly unimpressed. What? If I'm not mistaken, this is your father's turf. And you, the crown prince, need to come to me to leave? I met his playful gaze calmly. I mean, take me out from right under his nose. Parker's fingers paused on the coffee cup. For a moment, his calm expression cracked. So, Brian, you want me to make the sole heir of Daniel disappear on his own ground? Are you hoping I'll die sooner? I took a sip of coffee. I know you will do it. He rested his cheek on his hand. Not just will, I can. Honestly, I agreed to meet you. But I'm not foolish enough to throw my life away. Just don't know if you're brave enough to fight for it. I looked up sharply. Fight how? A sleek black handgun thudded on the table. Our eyes met in the air. Everything was settled. When I stepped out of the cafe, my face was pale, and a gun was pressed against the back of my neck. Parker pushed the gun a little harder. Go back and tell your chairman, if he wants his son to live, he needs to clear a path and let me get on that plane. The people following me didn't know I came here willingly to see Parker. They panicked. One of them saying, "Don't do anything reckless," while also calling for backup through their earpiece. Get approval from the chairman quickly. Brian's in trouble. Forget meetings. Just barge in and tell him. Or 10 of you won't be enough to pay the price. Taking advantage of the crowd, Parker dragged me into a car. 2 people behind untied the ropes binding my wrists. I had your childhood friend drive to pick you up. When you get to the highway, jump from the car. I have a farm out in the suburbs, no one knows about it. Hide out there for a few days until the heat dies down. Then leave City A. I glanced at the red marks on my wrists. Thanks. No need. Parker said lazily. Just hand over the Austin Rose business under your name to me. The Austin Rose business chain. Just that? Parker seemed to read my thoughts. My Omega likes it. I paused. Then recalled the Omega he mentioned was the one he took from his father, the Omega stepfather. So he'd planned this all along. The Omega must be something truly special to make him lose his head like this. Fine. It's not like I'm losing out, I agreed without hesitation. Looking up at the rearview mirror, I realized this young alpha was quite handsome. The car waiting outside was already almost level with ours. Thomas waved from inside and opened the convertible roof. Jump. I'll drive carefully. I leapt into the sports car. And the roof closed automatically. Thomas looked at me several times before hesitating to ask. Is the secretary's report about your development really true? I crossed my legs moodily. What do you think? Thomas wisely shut up but couldn't stop glancing in that direction. Knowing I couldn't stop human curiosity, I closed my eyes, avoiding the view. Thomas steered and asked, "Are we really going to the place Parker mentioned?" I lowered my gaze, thinking for a moment. Then said, "No. Change course. Go to my private apartment." I was still cautious with Parker. Our cooperation wasn't rock solid yet. If he was just using me to threaten my father, that would be a huge mistake. I had Thomas prepare a whole drawer of inhibitors at my private villa in advance. I even locked up an alpha in the basement, just in case. I swapped my SIM card and contacted Thomas on a new line. Just as I expected. Almost at the exact time of my abduction. All traffic and flight routes in City A were under lockdown. Not even a single runaway could escape. And Daniel hadn't appeared in public or the media since that day. I had no idea where he was or what he was doing. But as time went on, I increasingly noticed changes in my body. I wiped my face at the sink, cold water dripped down my jaw. I never imagined I would ever be this miserable, instinctively submitting even to alphas weaker than me. I could only be grateful my father hadn't witnessed this. I curled up in the nest I'd made for myself. Somehow. Only this way. Could an Omega find even a little bit of safety before fully developing? When Thomas called, knowing I was still thinking about Daniel, he said, "Daniel has an alpha friend back from abroad who's been busy with this. He hasn't had time to deal with your situation. Once you've developed, you can leave the country." I answered softly, "Bring some extra blankets when you come tomorrow." "Got it," Thomas replied. In the middle of the night, I developed a high fever and felt nauseous. I had no knowledge of Omega physiology and didn't know if this was normal. When I first came home, I suffered from fever and fainted due to the change in environment and water. Many urged Daniel to give up on me and find another heir. But Daniel refused, staying with me in the VIP ward for 3 days. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang while I was still groggy. It was pouring rain outside. I slipped on my slippers and went to open the door. A tall, imposing alpha blocked the only exit. It wasn't Thomas, it was Daniel. He stood calmly, his black cashmere coat dripping with rain. He didn't deliberately release his alpha scent, so I didn't immediately fall to my knees. Daniel bent slightly, cold rain air washing over me. His deep, unfathomable eyes held no rage, only a frozen, dead calm. Like examining a lost but badly damaged possession. Running away. Good boy. 2 tall alphas carried Thomas inside behind him. Thomas hurriedly shouted from behind Daniel, "I didn't betray you." He glanced at Daniel. Who held such power that Thomas dared not openly oppose him? Finally, Thomas mouthed, "Daniel threatened me at my place." Of course. I believed Thomas, childhood friends. After all, I had clearly pinned the blame on Parker. How did Daniel find Thomas? Did he know about my development results? I panicked but only heard Daniel say, "I thought I treated you well. I raised you all these years. And this is how you repay me. Working with Parker. Playing a double game against your father." I suddenly looked up. He didn't know. He still didn't know. Maybe it had been too long since he'd been close to an Omega. He probably didn't recognize the pheromone, the scent of an Omega about to develop, or maybe he mistook it for Thomas's. I didn't want to think more and quickly lowered my head. "I'll go back with you." Because of the fever. I almost collapsed forward. Daniel caught me, frowning deeply. "What's wrong?" But I had already lost consciousness. Leaning heavily on him, Daniel touched my forehead, his expression growing serious. He laid me down horizontally and carried me into his car. When I woke up, I was already at home. The fever had gone down at some point after all the twists and turns. But it felt like I was right back where I started. The warmth surged again. This was a sign that I was about to fully develop into an Omega. I couldn't develop here. The pheromones released by an Omega during development are the strongest. Even if Daniel was slow to notice, there was no way he wouldn't realize I had become an Omega. I forced myself to call the butler on the internal line, "Prepare a car. I need to go out." The butler sounded helpless. "Young master. It's not that I don't want to help. But the chairman said you can't go anywhere right now. And he's given everyone the night off. He wants to speak with you." Just as the call ended, my glands began to change. Some underdeveloped organs started maturing rapidly. The moment Daniel stepped into the house, he smelled the strong Omega estrus pheromones filling the entire estate. Surprisingly, his instinctive disgust didn't appear. Instead, in an instant, the long-suppressed sensitive period was triggered. Though his rational mind burned with shock, Daniel quickly regained his composure. How could there be an Omega? And an Omega seducing his Brian? My door was kicked open with force. I panicked and looked up, instinctively trying to cover myself from the thighs down. I wanted to hide under the blanket, but my eyes met Daniel's slightly reddened gaze. "I'm not an alpha, father." I looked up embarrassed, fingers instinctively pulling back. "I'm not an alpha. I've disappointed you." Daniel stared at me, his distracted eyes burning with deep desire. He glanced at the half-open window that someone had tried to close. His once soft tone returned to cold disappointment. "You can't remember what your father taught you, nor the care I gave you. You only want to run away from me, don't you?" My heart trembled, my pupils losing focus. "No. It's not that. I just didn't want you to know your heir would be an Omega." My throat tightened. I couldn't say a word. My body trembled violently from pain and fever as I desperately shrank back. He didn't ask more. A black leather-gloved hand reached out. Sharp knuckles moved with a chilling precision and authority. Cold fingertips touched the hot, delicate skin at the back of my neck. Ugh! I shuddered sharply, like burned by a branding iron, letting out a short whimper. During development, the glands are terrifyingly sensitive. Every touch felt like electricity shooting through my spine, bringing waves of indescribable shame and panic. "I don't believe you." This was probably the first time Daniel was utterly unreasonable. He bent down, breathing heavily, and bit into my gland. Unless you remember me, use this place. I weakly raised a finger. The heat from estrus made my body crave his mercy and touch. The newly sensitive spot reddened with every bite. And Daniel showed no mercy. I was left dazed. My pupils unfocused. All I could do was repeat the safe phrase I had prepared over and over. I'm sorry. I'm not an alpha. Daniel kissed my sweat-dampened temple again and again, trying to soothe my fierce struggles caused by abdominal cramps. It's okay if you're not an alpha. You can give me a little alpha here, that's your duty as my son. This was the second day I locked myself in my room and refused to eat. Also the second day after my estrus period ended. But even if the door was opened, it wouldn't change anything. I didn't know how to face Daniel. Since I was a kid, this man had been like both a teacher and a father to me. Almost the most important part of my life. Even if I once had feelings that I shouldn't have, they were quickly extinguished by my respect for him. My mind was a mess. No one ever taught me how to handle something like this. My fingers pressed repeatedly against my glands, which were almost bitten raw by the alpha. This was his punishment for me. Because I wasn't the alpha he wanted. So I had to be trapped by his side forever. Just a breeding tool to produce alphas. Then he would have a new little alpha. And wouldn't need me anymore. Tears slipped down my nose but hadn't fallen yet, when someone licked them away with their tongue. Crazy. After all this time of ups and downs. Still not enough. Now even tears. Even after I calmed down, I chose to keep my distance from Daniel. I don't even call him father now. I run away as soon as I see him from afar. Daniel knows. But there's nothing he can do. During estrus, I injected suppressant after suppressant until I developed resistance. I curled up in a pile of Daniel's clothes, red-eyed, lining up the empty suppressant vials in the cabinet. It was then my phone rang. It was Thomas. Hey. Have you and Daniel fallen out? Are you really ignoring him now? I frowned. What's wrong? Thomas was shocked. Immediately said, Damn. Did no one tell you? Parker has kidnapped Daniel. He's at the South Alley Pier. Only then did I realize many of Daniel's men watching over me were suddenly gone. Something really happened. I glanced outside. If I ran now, by the time he snapped out of it, he probably wouldn't catch me. But is he really okay? I shook my head hard, trying not to think about him. How could anything happen to him? He's Daniel, controlling everything in a city. But what if Parker really is a desperate fugitive? My fingers clenched tightly, though I hadn't accepted him yet. If he really died here, I would regret it for the rest of my life. I quickly finished my last suppressant injection and headed to the South Alley Pier. Sure enough, everyone was there, frozen in a standoff. Parker was holding Daniel hostage right in the middle. Bang! Without thinking, I pulled out my pistol. I fired directly at Parker's shoulder. By the time he noticed, it was too late. He scrambled to dodge. I seized the moment he loosened his grip and lunged toward Daniel. The broad arms of the alpha wrapped around me, pulling me close and planting a kiss on my head. Father's here. Don't be afraid. Okay. I muttered softly. Can you treat your own life like it matters? Got it. Daniel rubbed my head. With you around, how could father die? Behind us. Parker staggered to his feet. Have you two had enough of treating me like a dog? Do you even respect me? Daniel calmly covered my eyes. Put down your gun. We can talk. Put down my gun. Are you kidding? Parker's voice grew more furious. Also, Give me back my Omega. I've done everything you said, been held hostage by you. Held you hostage in return. Now you've got your little prized Omega back. I advise you to stop while you can. What? My head spun. I had no clue what Parker was saying. Being blindfolded, I couldn't see a thing. Only Daniel's calming pheromones brought me any comfort. I rubbed against his palm, but he pressed my hand down. Don't tease me outside like that. My self-control isn't that strong. Daniel removed his hand from my eyes, calmly meeting Parker's raging gaze. I'm not holding your Omega hostage. I just brought him somewhere. When I left, no one was guarding him. And the door was left open. If you can still catch him now, then he's still yours. No need to chase. The tracker I put on him hasn't moved. Under Daniel's mildly shocked gaze, Parker spat and glared fiercely. We're pure love. Damn it. Unlike you two. Playing dirty. Parker cursed and walked away. Daniel turned and looked at my slightly reddened eyes. The heat of estrus surged again. You lied to me. I didn't lie. Parker really did kidnap me. Daniel lowered his eyes gently. Then started his sly argument. If you can work with Parker, why can't I? You love me too much. Care too much. That's why you don't want me to die. Baby. I just want you to see your own heart clearly. My eyes were damp with heat. Really? Daniel nodded. Really? So why did I feel like I'd been tricked? After some thought, I finally understood. The only reason I was fooled was because Parker's reputation in the underworld was so notorious. Thinking of that, I shot Parker a sharp glare. Parker, happily greeting his wife? Daniel said he wanted to take me to meet someone very important. I gave him the back of my head. He played too dirty last night. And I was genuinely angry. Daniel chuckled and pulled me into his arms. Here's an adult gift for you. This time, I really won't lie. But he had no credibility with me. Daniel coaxed me for a long time before I agreed to meet the person. On the living room sofa sat an alpha about Daniel's age. He looked up with slightly sharp eyes. Brian? Seeing my hesitant gaze, Daniel slowly explained. This is your biological father. Years ago, he had an important mission to entrust his Omega and you to me. But something went wrong halfway. I only found you in the orphanage. That was our first meeting. I looked him over and realized this alpha had the same yellow-green eyes as me. Could he really be my biological father? Though I wasn't sure. I knew Daniel wouldn't lie to me. He wouldn't waste time inventing a fake father-in-law. At that moment, the alpha suddenly jumped up, eyes wide with shock as he looked at our joined hands. What's this? Tell me what this is. Ha! Brother? Daniel calmly stood between us. Just like you see it. I've marked your son. I'm his alpha. We each have our roles. The other man exploded. Get lost. I've done everything for you. And this is how you repay me. I entrusted you with my wife and son. Not to inherit my wife. Nor have my son be your wife. The scene erupted into chaos. I don't know how Daniel convinced my biological father afterward. I only knew he left with bruises and scratches. That was probably the first time in years I'd seen him so disheveled. On the way home, I pinned him down in the back seat. He had to raise a hand to steady my waist. I glared at the man who had controlled me from start to finish. You lied to me again. Daniel chuckled. How did I lie to you? That bastard was still laughing. Did he not know he was risking death? I gritted my teeth, holding back the urge to bite his glands. You said you adopted me because I was an alpha. And you lied about me having to give you a little alpha. Who knew his dirty talk would be so filthy? It made me believe it for real. When I saved him, I was even ready to be caught and have a kid with him. Daniel's big fingers pressed against my jaw, stroking my lips. Who said I lied? He raised a finger. And the driver understood. A divider slowly rose inside the car. I realized this wasn't good and tried to run. But the tall, dominant alpha moved faster, flipping me onto the back of the seat. My slightly parted, flushed lips were covered by colder ones. Whether you give birth or not, Father will listen to you. But the family will belong to you. If you don't have a child, it'll really be a loss to outsiders.